forgetting to record my session. So we are now officially recording our session. So let's go from here.
Hey, hey, Paul.
Hey. Yes.
Please, there's a specific login number we need to find. It's on. I'm going to send it to you right now on your email.
Okay. We're in the middle of a workshop here, so we've had some interesting WebEx challenges in the last little while, so it may be that there's a bunch of participants waiting to join a meeting somewhere else, but you know, this is the meeting we're in, so we're going to run with it. This is our meeting. First of all, let's just start with the very basics here. And this is some kind of nasty news, and so this is something we call the Great Dieoff. And look, you may have heard all of this before, of these ecology concepts and climate change concepts have been floating around a long time. But I'm going to present this in a very simple context that very clear messaging that should serve as something of a wake-up call, or at least, at the very least, a call to action. So if you take any organism, it could be mice, or it could be bacteria, and you put them in a closed environment with a limited food supply, something really interesting happens, which is that their population increases exponentially. And so they grow and they grow and they grow, they expand, they expand, they expand, and at some point they exceed the available resources, and then many of them die off. So, you know, this is something that's been modeled thousands of times in a research context. If you view humanity in the same context, we are operating within a very small biosphere. It seems big. The Earth seems big when you look at it from outside. It looks like a big round rock, but the actual biosphere is, you know, really just a few kilometers high. It's just the part that can support life is very tiny, and so we cannot say with absolute certainty that the Great Dieoff is coming. And you know, at some point in the next 200 years, it's possible that 80% of all humans would die off. But we don't know this for sure. It could be 99% of all humans that die off. And look, you might say that, Paul, that's not going to happen, or the probability of that happening is very low. Even if it's a 20% chance, or even a 5% chance that 80% of all humans will die off, that's a pretty big risk. And so the question we would have to ask ourselves is, do we care? As humans living alive today, do we care about the Great Dieoff? And you might say, hey, I'm not going to die off. I'm in a safe, secure place. It's those people over there that are going to die off. You know, those people in Africa, or those people in Asia. So the question really is, do we collectively, as the totality of humanity, do we care? And you know, for me, I had a little wake-up call. I spent many years living in China. And if you've spent some time in China, you know, anywhere from about 2007 to about 2015, there's something called PM 2.5, and then you would have a 500-plus day. So if you look down below here, you can see a group of people very paradoxically doing Tai Chi while they're living in a soup of toxic chemicals, which is, you know, not a very healthy thing to do. And I remember I would prepare to go out on these days, and I would wear a mask, I would wear goggles. After a couple hours, your body would be covered in this dust. Your eyes would hurt, your skin would itch. And so I'd like you to consider that at some point, our grandchildren may be living in a planet that looks like this. So for me personally, I had enough time being in that environment that it kind of served as my wake-up call for that things aren't necessarily the way they seem. Okay, we're moving on. I'm going to go fairly fast in this next section. We've got a bunch of challenges here. And so here's the entire history of the Earth, going from 4.6 billion years ago up until the present. And I'd like to suggest that if everyone were to use LED light bulbs and recycle more, that we could just, solve global warming once and for all. Not. So can you see that there's kind of a church of personal guilt where each of us has to be personally guilty for the bad decisions that we make, and I'd like to suggest that all of that is irrelevant. The scope and the scale of the change that we're going through is completely irrelevant to changing to LED light bulbs or recycling a little bit more. So let's just say we planted some trees. Let's plant some trees. How about we cover every square inch of the land mass of the planet Earth with trees? Would that make a difference? And of course, the answer is no, because what we're doing is very, very simple. There was this big period of time, the first 2 billion years, nothing much happened on Earth. It was just mostly a rock. And then, hey, we've got single-celled organisms. Wow, what a breakthrough. And then this is a logarithmic scale, right? And so then we've got, multi-celled organisms. And then 500 million years ago, the multi-celled organisms start to get a little bigger. And so this is, it's kind of the last 5 million years are the interesting part. And then the question is, where in all this is one human lifespan? So I'm going to put a dot down here. This little dot represents one human with a lifespan, but of course the line is way too thick because 100 years, if you're lucky, is such a tiny amount of time in the scale of time, in the time scale of change, that the visible change that we can see in our lifetime is irrelevant to the level of change that is happening in the world today. So this is a big, big challenge for us as humans with our limited human lifespan to be able to see out into time with scale. In this call today, I'm also going to take the role of an eco-skeptic. And this isn't an eco-skeptic as in someone who believes that climate change is not real. This is an eco-skeptic in which I believe that humans don't currently have the capability to make any significant shift or change that would alter the direct path that we're on right now, which is a path that leads to the Great Dieoff. So show me evidence that humans are taking action that is not in alignment with the Great Dieoff. And so the question comes back to, do we care? Do we care that we're on a direct collision course for this mass extinction event? And again, I doubt highly that all humans would go extinct. But we're talking about some very small pockets of humans who are living in a very controlled biosphere. It's kind of like living underground in a cave. And then there's a bunch of other humans who are living very terrible lives. So that may not, I watch a little bit too much science fiction, so maybe that's not the dystopian future, and maybe there's a scientific solution or a breakthrough. But I'm going to take the role of the skeptic and say that right now our actions collectively as a human species are not in alignment with that future. Okay, so let's just take this out a little bit further. We have system collapse, and in the words of Stephen Hawking basically said, hey, humans, you are doing a great job of terraforming Earth to become Venus. And so, we're giving you about 600 years until your terraforming project is complete and you have successfully transformed Earth into Venus. Now, we actually are not quite on track to turning Earth into Venus because Venus is closer to the sun. It's got a little bit more acidity in the atmosphere. And so it's unlikely that we'll be able to kind of achieve the 400 degrees temperature that you can get on the surface of Venus, but we might get to 100 or 200. So remember, what we're doing here is very simple. We are time shifting CO2, right? So this is the real issue here. And so if we go back to the early life, so we've got 1, 2, 1.5, we've got a good solid 1.5 billion years in which the sun is sending photons to Earth. Those photons are energy. Plants are turning that energy into complex molecules. Those plants die, they rot, they turn into oil. That oil goes underground. Most of that oil is coming from algae. And then we, the humans, pull that oil up and then we burn it. And humans love to burn. We just love burning things. That's one of our favorite things to do. So can you see that by time shifting all of the carbon energy from the last 1 billion years, and then what we're going to do now is we're going to release it all at once in a 100-year period. Can you see how this works? We're taking all of this CO2 from the last 1.5 billion years, and what we're going to do is release it all at once, And just to put this into perspective, I live in Canada here. In Canada, we have this thing called Alberta, and in Alberta, there's these tar sands, and the tar sands alone have more than enough embedded CO2 to destroy the ecology of the Earth as we know it. So that's just one application, and it's kind of like having a nuclear bomb hanging over your head, except in this case there's many, many nuclear bombs because there's just so much CO2. We've got 1.5 billion years of CO2 stored away. Okay, so now how do we deal with it? Here's an interesting word for you. We're going to call this eco-jihad. So what is eco-jihad? Well, this is kind of a science fiction concept where a bunch of humans realize that that the world is about to die, and so there's a giant war, a holy war, in which the people of the Earth, vow to never use the internal combustion machine ever again. However, it's very unlikely that it ends that way, and I'm certainly not advocating an eco-jihad. But the reason that we mention this idea is that we're operating within a paradigm of governance. And can you see that the current paradigm of governance that we're operating in, let's call that one democracy. Democracy may not have the capacity to deal with the time scale and the system collapse that we're facing. And I'll give you a really good example of how democracy works. So, for example, if we were going to have a vote and we said, hey, everyone likes money, why don't we just borrow a lot of money and then we can be rich and our grandchildren can pay it back. Hey humans, that sounds like a pretty good idea. That's called debt. And so, can you see that in a democracy, it would be very easy to convince the citizens to say yes to that idea. That let's borrow a lot of money and let's not worry about it. Our grandchildren can pay it back. And then a lot of people are going to say yes. So you can think of that in terms of money, but you can also think of that in terms of eco-debt, right? So can you see that right now that we're building up eco-debt globally as, across the entire civilization? And there's a lot of great tricky moves you could do here, like offshoring all our pollution to China. China's going to sell us cheap stuff that improves our quality of life. China gets rich, and we get to buy all that stuff for not very much money, and China has no pollution controls, so they can just produce as much pollution as they want to, and it all works out just perfectly, except there's only one atmosphere on planet Earth, right? So any pollution that gets generated in China, it's going to slowly dissipate around the Earth, and it's going to end up in the oxygen that you breathe. So can you see, humans, that we have a tremendous capacity for building up eco-debt, and we're doing an outstanding job of in our mission to build up as much ecological debt as possible. By the way, look, I know that it sounds like I'm cavalier, or that I'm, talking about a really serious conversation in a light and jovial way. And so, first of all, I apologize. And second is, I want you to get this into your bones, that right now that we as the human race are operating at almost perfect efficiency, 100% efficiency, and we're heading toward a very singular goal, which is the destruction of our planet. And all of our systems and thinkings and lifestyle and habits are perfectly correlated with producing that result. So, but hey guys, this is kind of serious. And the interesting thing, going back to COVID-19, is that COVID-19 is kind of a wake-up call. But, from 500 years in the future, looking back to now, can you see that COVID-19 is kind of a precursor or a little speed bump on the road that is giving us a tiny wake-up call for what's coming? So, this may not be true. It may not work out this way. But right now, we have to say that there's a significant chance that it will work out this way. And the more that you function as a scientist, the further you get into all this, the worse it all seems. Sorry, more bad news coming. Okay, to buy is to burn. So, we really have to look at our lifestyle here. So our core lifestyle is, money or success equals happy. And I'd like you to consider just pick up an object on the table or on the chair in front of you. And, think about that object for a second. I'm holding a pair of bells. These are my bells. I bought them in China. They were made in India. But the thing about these bells is they're made of metal. So where does metal come from? Well, metal comes from ore. And where does ore come from? Well, ore is kind of like, rocky dirt that you pull out of the ground. But in order to turn the ore into metal, you have to heat it all up. And while you're heating it up, anything that isn't metal gets burned off. And you end up with a bunch of silica, basically sand, that turns into glass or slag, and you get rid of that. And what's left over is some metal. So anything that you buy that's made out of metal has been produced using a huge amount of energy. And where did that energy come from? Mostly from burning coal. And so if you look around the room, everything in your physical space represents the burning of something. And everything there is creating a lot of CO2. It's just the bottom line is we're creating massive tons of CO2. So to produce about a ton of metal, you also produce about a ton of CO2. And so we're in a Chinese finger trap. A Chinese finger trap, the more you wiggle, the more you move, the tighter it gets. And unless we can come back to some real basics here and get back to this addiction to what we call success, we really will have no power in all of this. Humans are designed to be comfortable. We want to be comfortable, and comfort equals no change. And so, you can say that all of this is inevitable, and a good reaction would be apathy. So a lot of people in the world, that's where they're going with all this. It seems so big. The problem is so big. There's nothing I can really do. So I'm just going to stay comfortable, keep doing what I'm doing, and stay on the tracks that I am on. And this is why COVID-19 is so important. It's really a vital wake-up call that's pulling us back to our core values. Safety is important. Connection with family is important. We're now living a life in which we are consuming much less, and somehow we are happy and satisfied with this life. This is the reality. I'm going to ask. Please make sure that you are muted. Okay, we are moving on here. Believe it or not, there's some solutions here somewhere in the future. Okay, so the question is, can we change? So there's a mindset transformation that needs to happen. Coaches, this is a good place to start thinking about this. Christopher has a lot to say on this one. This is a global social change and a transformation in leadership, or in the paradigm of what we call leadership. And to quote our wonderful Milton Erickson, change is inevitable. Unfortunately, in this case, change is inevitable, and it could go two ways. So there's the change where we transform and something positive happens and we learn and grow, and then the change is where, the other version of the change is where the earth just deteriorates and, we end up in a real mess. So, we collectively as a human species have to decide which change we want to have, and then we collectively have to take action in alignment with that change. But first, you gotta wanna. So this is where our conversation today is, getting people to gotta wanna. Okay, we're moving on. I'm going to open this up for just a few questions or comments or challenges. And I'm going to, first and foremost, I'm going to call on my other presenters, Marilyn, Christopher, Peter, Rosa. Anyone would like to add anything to everything I just discussed?
The issue is so many layered, Paul. It's presenting us with too many choices. It's complex, and people say we're living in the VUCA world now: volatile, complex, ambiguous, and uncertain. The thing with this is that most human beings don't know how to deal with too much complexity. However, there are some thinkers who are going to what is the first action we have to take. For example, dealing with changing our energy sources being the first action, and getting together only on that, and then resolving the other ones as well. So this is where I think there's been quite a lot of action taken with development of solar, even solar paint, with the development of making things cheap. Solar is much cheaper now than even the use of gas and oil. This is an amazing thing. It's become cheaper. And it's a matter, I think, of publicizing this, which is what I think one thing that we eco coaches can do by working together as a team and talking to the various corporate leaders who are not knowing that they can link themselves to this movement. That's all for now.
Okay, Marilyn. Marilyn is pulling us towards solutions, which is, of course, where we're going next. So we're going to start to shift gears and focus on solutions. And so, hey, we're just a bunch of coaches. What do we know about science and engineering and economics? Well, this is where we're going to really bring in the power of coaching. And so, there's a bunch of smart people in the world, and I use that as a very loving term. Smart people. I wish I could be one. So when we talk about these solutions, you are working with scientists. We have to respect the tradition of science, and there's a foundation of science that we're dealing with here. And as we move from the pure research and the basic science, we move into engineering solutions, and at a really big level, we are talking about large-scale engineering. And, look, I'm going to admit that when we're talking about solutions, I am an eco-entrepreneur and an eco-capitalist. So at some level, I honestly believe that there's a tech solution floating out there. But, it isn't just technology. There's also a lot of social transformation. There's also about a leadership transformation, mindset transformation, lifestyle transformation. So there's many, many layers of this. So I don't want to make it sound like this is all about technology, but I'm going to focus on this point for a minute or two. So we've got engineering of solutions. At another level, we also have to look at economics. In the big picture, this these solutions have to make sense economically. If we can't make them work economically, it's very hard to make the whole thing scale up. And at a certain level, we do need to include those business leaders over there, those evil business leaders. I guess we'll include them in our club. And so we're asking, what can coaches offer to all these smart, talented people who have all the answers? And by the way, there's a little picture here of an Alka Cube. This is a product I was working on, October, November, December, January. This was one of my first eco-coaching projects. And this is a device that it eats carbon, it eats wastewater, human waste, sewage, it eats radioactivity, it eats many classes of toxic chemicals, not all toxic chemicals. It uses specialized types of algae, which essentially feed off those chemicals, and it produces oxygen. It produces organic fertilizer. It produces thousands of high-value chemicals. It can even produce vaccines for various pharmaceutical applications, and it produces a lot of human food. So this is kind of a universal silver box, and you can put many things into it and produce many other things from it, and it can scale up. And I was very lucky to be the eco-coach for a small, crazy, high-energy team of engineers who built this. And we kind of went from, in a 3-month period, we went from a working prototype that was working on a laboratory bench through a product launch where we had a physical device that was getting launched. And of course, they still have lots of challenges, but Rose and I worked together on this project, and this is a great example of eco-coaching. Okay, so part 2, how to be an eco-coach. And so we're going to cover a lot here in the next few minutes. So we've got the business of team coaching, of agility, lean, breakthrough projects, speed, traction. And then here's a picture of Soroman. And Soroman has realized that he has work to do. So in his deepest, darkest voice, he says, "We have work to do." And of course, Soroman's kind of evil, but he's also a wizard. He's pretty powerful. So I'd like you to somehow imagine that you have a magic wand and you have a lot of power, a lot more power than you think you have. So it's time to put your power to work and get to work on the solution. Okay, number 1, team coaching. This is a community of coaches, and of all of our magic tools, team coaching is the #1 tool. Coaches forget how powerful they can be. And so you remember, here's all our smart people here, our scientists, our engineers, our economists, our business leaders. And, you know, the interesting thing is that smart people get stuck, and it's almost inversely proportional. The smarter you are, the better you get stuck. And coaches are people who get teams unstuck. And, you know, I'm just going to be a little bit nasty here, because I know that, you know, as coaches, we love to go off and talk about inner strength and inner leadership and transformational change. And all that stuff is good. In fact, it's kind of where we're going with all of it. But at a really basic level, you got a team that has a problem and they need to fix that problem. They need a solution. So you say, what do you want? They say, we need to fix our problem. And I'd like to point out that coaching is really good at fixing problems. And so when we're talking about agility, or we're really getting at using your coaching tools to fix real down-to-earth problems. And coaches kind of tend to forget that that's what coaching is about. Coaching is a really good system for fixing problems. So my call to you is to stand for the power of coaching. This is your job, people. Stand for the power of coaching. If you're not going to stand for the power of coaching, who is going to stand for the power of coaching? So stand for the power of coaching. And then I'd also like you to begin to imagine that you could become an agility master coach. Okay, Mr. Agility or Mrs. agility master coach. So you've got some training, you've got some skills, you've really taken on the mindset, and you have been practicing a lot. And when you put that all together, you have some very real and measurable results. And so you are well on your path to becoming the agility master coach. And you're kind of like an agility commando. So, we've got an organization. It could be a big corporation, or it could just be a group of startup entrepreneurs who have some great idea for how we're going to solve global warming or transform the earth, but they are stuck. So we need our agility commandos to come in with their helicopters. They rappel down from the helicopter on a rope. They burst into the meeting, and they're armed with their flip charts, their big fat pens, and lots of Post-it notes, and they're working with the leaders for an hour or two, and at the end of hour or two, the team is fully aligned. They know what they need to do. They know their action steps, and they have a comprehensive plan for doing it. And after a couple sessions like that, the coach gets fired, and the team can do it on themselves, on their own. They don't need the coach anymore because they become sustainable. Okay, so then we have the universe of universal agility. So what is universal agility? So, once upon a time, we had the world of Agile, which was a tech thing for writing software. So we are going way beyond the world of tech. And also, Agile, I'd like to point out, is by and large a project management system. Of course, Agile people hate project management because it's a replacement. Agile is project management 2.0. But Agile still takes place within the domain of project management. So we're going beyond that. We're including strategy, an entire organization, design, there's many other elements beyond project management that are needed here to create breakthrough solutions. And so this is a unique technology that can work with any company and any industry. So this is the universal part. And our job is to transform leadership, transform strategy, and demonstrate results. So here's kind of, over here we have just kind of a random model from the model book. But there's a lot of systemic thinking. And Marilyn was talking about VUCA a little while ago. And, I like to call it accelerating confusion. Because, the more you try to do something that hasn't been done before, the more that you must face confusion, especially in the early stages of projects. You're going to hit a lot of confusion. Your team goes through a lot of confusion. I remember I was working with SAP back around 2015, and SAP launched Simple, and SAP launched Cloud, and suddenly the entire company was in a state of confusion because no one knew what Simple meant, and no one knew what Cloud meant, and all the infrastructure systems and processes that were designed to support that hadn't been built yet. So you just had a bunch of people running around in a state of confusion. And so can you see that COVID-19 is kind of the same thing? COVID is a large, unexpected thing that happened, and so that puts us, the human race, into an accelerating state of confusion. And then there's a bunch of people, let's call them the smart doctor, medical scientist type humans, who actually know what to do. But because the level of confusion is so high, no one's willing to listen to them. So we've got a problem state, and we need to create a shift or a transformation on demand when it's needed. So when we're talking about universal agility, we're talking about a system process model to create a shift or transformation on demand. Okay, we're moving along fairly quick. Sorry for the information dump. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of Q-model. The reason that I love Q-model is that I can show it to business leaders and smart technical engineer type humans, and they instantly get it. This is more than anything a coaching model. And so I'd like to point out a couple things here. Let's say you're working with a team, and the team has a lot of challenges. And so the first challenge would be trust. Can you see that a team that is in a low state of trust is not going to be able to function very well? And so, of course, it's a little simplistic to say that we're just going to ask one question: what is our current state? And that's going to create a breakthrough in trust. But of course, the Q model is kind of simple and magical. So we are saying that by assisting our leaders, our team, our smart technical people have a series of conversations in which they're directly examining the current state. Where are we at now? What is the challenge, and how do we turn to face that challenge, that we can have a breakthrough in trust? And, the tricky thing is that the coach is someone who is trained to lead those conversations. And I used to say it's difficult to give yourself a haircut, because it's true, it's very hard to cut your own hair. It's very hard to ask coaching questions of yourself. And so, coaching yourself is not easy to do. You need another person who's external to you, who's over there, who can see you, who can cut your hair, who can ask you those questions. And so this is the function of a coach. And however, recently I've started cutting my hair because I can't go to the hairdresser because of COVID-19. And I have to say that my hair cutting skills have significantly improved. So, with practice, anything is possible. So it's passable. Okay, so perhaps you can cut your own hair. Okay, so our first element is a breakthrough in current state. By the way, that's supposed to be humor. You're supposed to all laugh now. Our second breakthrough is a desired state breakthrough. So this is about being very clear in what we want to go to. And operating in the world of VUCA, there's a lot of confusion. People, as you get into the challenge, as you get into the layers, people get overwhelmed. In any project cycle, you begin with everyone relatively clear about where we are and what we want to know, and then you go into the project cycle, you hit a bunch of unknown, unexpected things, confusion reigns supreme, and then we can no longer connect to what do we want. We don't have a clear what do we want anymore, and this is where the magic of a coach, and especially a team coach, is to come in and start grinding through those layers down to, okay, what do we want? What do we really want? How do we work through the layers of strategy? How do we work through the different options to achieve a state of alignment? And, if I was going to sum this all up in one word, the one word that I would probably choose is alignment. Just as an individual can have internal alignment, a team, a company, a project can have team alignment. And, this is one of the most valuable things a team coach can bring, an agile coach can bring to a team or project and an organization. Okay, so then our final state is committed action. So you can think of this in terms of, implementation. There's a whole bunch of stuff there around implementation. But actually, this is not about project planning. This is about the state of being 100% committed. And, promises and commitment, they kind of live in a quantum state, So the moment you say you're going to do something out in the future, you're putting the cat in the box, and, maybe you're going to do it, and maybe you're not going to do it. You actually don't know whether or not that's going to happen until you actually do it or you don't do it, in which case we open the box and the cat is either alive or the cat is dead. So a promise or commitment exists in a quantum state, and it's even more difficult when you're in a team. So we've got the quantum uncertainty of commitment on one side, but on the other side, we've all had an experience of being 100% committed. There was something we said we were going to do, and we said it with every cell in our body in such a way that we knew with absolute 100% certainty that, yeah, I am going to do that, and then guess what? We did it. So 100% committed, the state of being 100% committed is not an absolute, we don't know if it's an absolute. For example, absolute zero is the coldest temperature available in the universe, and the speed of light is an absolute speed of light. And, we have no way or ability to approach absolute zero or approach the speed of light. But you know when you're going in the right direction. And so you know when you're making commitment stronger or heading toward a state of 100% commitment. And coaches, this is your job, is to assist teams to move toward a higher state of commitment and learn what that is, learn how to manage that, and learn how to generate that on demand. Okay, we're moving on. Sorry, this is, if you guys want more information, then you can take my 8-week segment, training segment on all this at some point in the future. I want to talk a little bit about lean here, because lean is another one of these magic sets of tools. So let's say I'm working, not me, you're working with a startup team. You've got a group of smart, talented, ecologically minded people, and they want to introduce a project. Could be a technology project, could be a social project. Maybe they want to create education in Africa, and you're working with that team, and the very first thing you're going to discover is that you guys got limited resources. You don't have a huge, Bill Gates isn't funding your project, sorry about that. You've got limited resources, and so working with those limited resources, you're going to have a bootstrapping mentality. A couple things I want to throw in here. The concept of a blue ocean is really powerful. Blue ocean is when you are visioning a big success. You're imagining that it's possible to create some kind of a big success that would create growth with limited competition. And of course, this is a concept from business. But when you apply that same concept over to social projects, you get some really interesting things happening. So this idea of a blue ocean, it also links to disruption. You're disrupting the status quo with some radical new way of thinking, radical new idea, something new, novel, and unique, and it is inherently viral. Okay, MVP stands for minimum viable product. And so, as eco-coaches, we want to think in terms of, rather than building the Great Wall of China, we want to say, how can we build something small and easy, something light, that we can validate that our basic idea works? How can we have a mini launch where we just build a test, we have a test launch, and we see if people will really rally around this idea? So the principle of a minimum viable product, it's so powerful, it's so simple. I really encourage you to take this on, and it applies so much when you're working with early stage projects with limited resources. Now, it's important that we're heading in the right direction, so we have to imagine that our project can scale up. And scaling is, there's nothing better than, working for a software company, because once you finish your software, you can just press copy and get 1 million copies of your software. So, perhaps our project isn't quite as scalable as that. But if you don't plan for scalability, then you end up with very small projects that have a limited impact. So I really encourage you to plan for scalability. And, with scalability comes unintended consequences, but that's Christopher's talk. Christopher can talk a lot more about that. The next thing I want to talk about here is just the very concept of self-financing. Christopher was at COP25 last year. One of the things that he said was there's so many groups that have money, and they want to get that money to ecology-minded projects. And so what we're missing is the mature ecology-minded projects. So can you see that there's a big process that you've got somebody has an idea, and then you want to take that idea to a state where it could get financed. And often getting a team through those early stages to get the basics in place in order to get financing going is a real challenge. And so what we need is traction. And over here, I'd like to point out we have the Zen circle, which represents the iterative cycle of going around and around and around through a series of conversations, which is what coaching and agility is all about. Okay, so we need a breakthrough. And over here, we have human number 1. He's going to use 10 units of energy to produce 1 unit of results. And then over here we have human number 2. He's going to use 1 unit of energy to produce 10 units of results. Can you see that human number 2 has 100%, 100 times as much results as human number 1? So if you were to say, Paul, what is the most important thing you've learned in the last 5 years as a coach? I would say easily the most important thing I've learned is the very concept of breakthrough projects. And so our enemy, we are going to war with business as usual. That is our enemy. And a breakthrough project is the very context or idea of transformation. So we're presupposing, in a lean kind of way, that somehow we can come up with this great new product, solution, service, or result that is a real breakthrough. And that we're presupposing that our team, with our limited thinking resources and our limits on money, that somehow we can do it. Now, of course, you have to be realistic, which is even more challenging. But you have to ask for it. If you don't ask for it, you won't get it. And this is, where a coach asks a series of questions and has a series of conversations, which we keep saying, what do we want? And if what do we want is more business or as usual or more comfort, we're not going to get much. But if what we say we want is a breakthrough with 100 times results, then you're certainly not going to get it if you're not looking for it. So this is a transformational concept. There's a lot more to it. We'll have to go through it another day. Okay, our job here is speed plus traction. And I just want to briefly introduce the game. This is the eco-coaching game. How does this work? Number 1, you commit the game. Number 2, we give you a bunch of training. And by the way, we've been throwing around this time, and the time is called May 15th. And just like anything that is unique, new, and novel, there's a lot of confusion. So you guys, if you notice that this whole eco-coaching game has a lot of confusion, that's okay, because, as VUCA coaches, we're okay with confusion. And so something's going to happen on May 15th. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I'd like you to be mentally prepared to commit to something happening on May 15th, even though you don't know what it is. And we're going to figure that out when we get there, because that's what agility is. This something is going to involve a whole bunch of training, so we're going to give you a bunch of training, and we're going to ask you to give us 40 hours of your life minimum in return. And we are going to find, build, create a whole bunch of eco-coaches. We're going to put you into teams. Again, it's very hard to do this on your own. And then we're going to ask you to promise some results and somehow generate being committed to that promise. And then we're going to say, go. So this is the eco-coaching game. And, welcome to the eco-coaching game. I wish I could say with 100% certainty that it's all precisely procedurally written down. It isn't. We're still creating it as we go. But, would you be willing to play the eco-coaching game? And this is the game that we are playing. So here's where I want to say, be the change. And be the change is, of course, from Mahatma Gandhi. This is not about talking about it or thinking about it. It's simply, even though you're not ready, even though you don't have all the skills, you just step out, get in action, and be the change you wish to see. So this is my first real request, each of you here today, is just take it on in whatever way you can. Come join the eco-coaching team and take it on as a community, or take it on yourself in whatever way you want to, but be the change. Okay, our last slide is 100% committed, and whatever that means to you, generate being 100% committed. Now, I apologize that I've been talking for 1 hour. This is information dump. There's a lot on the subject. We're going to come back and break it apart in many, many sessions. So I'm just going to ask our community, what did you get from our conversation today? We want to have a few closing words in the next couple minutes. Please jump into the chat. What was the key thing you learned today? Or key idea that hit you. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and just, if you could share one sentence of the most important idea you got from today, or just write it in the chat. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Edie says, Paul, you're overwhelming people. We are looking forward to solutions. Great ideas for the structured business coaching, understanding the problems. Thank you, Paul. To buy is to burn. Learn by doing. Great insights. And we've got a hand here. So where's our hand? Somebody wanted to share. I'm going to open it up if anyone wants to raise their hand and share. Able to make teams and people unstuck. And Selma, please say some words.
Breakthrough ideas.
Breakthrough ideas. Thank you, Selma.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Using agility concept can be used for coaching too. Jump into being the change. Collaboration in a complex environment. Okay, we've got one more hand here. Isale.
Ursula, yes, I love seeing smart people get stuck, and as coaches, how can we help them? I love that. Thank you, Paul.
Hey, thank you. Okay, we're finishing up here. The usual way of doing business will not work anymore. We need a different mindset, and eco-coaching is doing the job. Being your own business owners and creating ecological results. How can we help to increase global solidarity, Paul? Individual projects are good, of course, but how do we connect things together globally? Fabulous question. We are coming up on the end of the time. I did promise to finish on time, and so I am gonna do that. Remember, this an eco-coaching series. We have a series of speakers, a series of talks, and we are just beginning to kick off. I'm going to ring my bell, and I'm going to say we are complete for today. Thank you for today. Hey, we are complete.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Oh, you're so wonderful.
Hey. Okay, we're going to keep this group open. If anyone wants to have a little discussion, we can. We are finishing officially, but we'll leave this group open for another 10 minutes or so if anyone wants to unmute themselves and have a little chit-chat or discussion.
I liked your PowerPoint, especially the one of the context of transformation.
Sorry, which one was that?
That 10 to 1 and 1 to 10.
Oh, yeah. Breakthrough energy results. Thank you, Marilyn. Anyone else? Okay, we've got a hand here. Patricia, please feel free. If anyone...
I couldn't do it myself. Hi, thank you for that. A lot of really interesting nuggets that I took away. I was wondering, where do we get some more information about this incubator program game, or is that still to be rolled out?
Okay, so there's a bunch of things, and we are still coordinating our systems and process. So first of all, if you go to the Erickson website, erickson.edu, there is a sign-up page there, and it's quite important to sign up for that because then you will start to automatically get the emails. And I apologize for the fact that there are, 5 different sign-up pages on the Erickson site, so you have to find the right one. But once you sign up for the Eco Coaching Project, you'll start to get emails that kind of link you to the whole thing. So that's the first thing. The second is our Facebook group. And so our Facebook group is part of the Erickson World Game. And so that's an open group, so make sure to join that group. There's an old group that's closed. You can't join that one. There's a new group that's active, so join that one. And within that one, you'll find some links to the eco-coaching series, and it'll show you the schedule, and you can also participate in that group as well. So for now, those are our two organizational structures: is the newsletter subscription on the Erickson website and the Facebook group Erickson World Game.
Okay, so on the Erickson EDU site, do I need to log into my account then to find it, or is it?
No, it's unprotected. So that means that you don't have to be logged in, and even though you've already perhaps set up an account with Erickson and already subscribed to the general Erickson newsletter, you have to subscribe to a second newsletter to be part of the eco-coaching system. And Marco or anyone else on the line, please correct me if I'm wrong. But as far as I know, there's a second login or sign-up page that you have to go through in order to get those newsletters.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and if in a perfect world we'd be a little bit more organized and have all those links in my PowerPoint in a clear call to action and say, here's what the next step is, step 1, step 2, step 3. We have created an event called the Larger Eco-Coaching Project, which I think is in Facebook, and you can go, if you're committed to being part of the big game, which starts May 15th, you can go to that and click on going to that event, and that's your way of saying, hey, I'm in.
Okay, I'll take a look at that, and I'll track it all down, and thank you. I'll go to the Facebook,
okay.
I'll start the Facebook page.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, we have a few people left. If you have any questions or comments, we're here for another 5 minutes or so. So please feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand. Gareth. Please go ahead, Gareth.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question. I did a master's degree in sustainability, and we talked a lot about sort of this paradigm shift. And I think what I tend to see is a lot of people are still talking about transformation, but still within the same paradigm that we're operating in, right? And I think the advantage that something like COVID, like the opportunity that it shows us, is that kind of, call it that economic system, that economic paradigm, is somewhat broken. And how do we work towards changing that on a fundamental level as coaches is kind of my question.
Gareth, it's such a great question you're asking. And, I guess that comes back to one of our main themes, which is that, even though there's a lot of tragedy involved in COVID, it is a wonderful wake-up call for humanity. And, there's been a lot of pandemics in the past or emergencies in the past that humanity kind of ignored. And for some reason, we haven't ignored this one. So something has shifted, something has changed in that global awareness. And then the next question is kind of, speaking as an ecologist, how do we capitalize on that change and build momentum?
Well, I mean, I just see right now, a lot of the news is pushing towards opening up the economy again, and it's that huge push by those powers that be to put that cloak back on, right, and to shroud us again in this myth.
And the wonderful thing about that is that as soon as we open up the economy, the disease will flare up again, and so then we get the double hump camel of our curve. And so of course I'm not hoping for that. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But but when we're dealing with COVID-19, or we're dealing with ecology, the planetary ecology, we're dealing with a multi-headed hydra, an animal that is very complex. And if you chop off one head, 3 more heads emerge. And so the thinking and paradigm of let's just start our economy up again, that kind of one-dimensional decision-making process, is ineffective in the face of the complexity of the system we're in. So.
And I agree. And I guess my question is, how do we as coaches help people to continue to wake up to those facts, right? Because it's so easy for people just to switch back. I mean, I see it in personal relationships in family that they're just waiting for that.
Well, what we stumbled upon here with our eco-coaching breakthrough is the idea that, we can affect change in real projects, and that those projects can have enough impact that they become sustainable, they become self-financing, and that it's self-evident that the change has a certain level of momentum. I think the challenge here is that there's a lot of apathy, and there's a lot of people who believe that nothing will change. Mm-hmm. And by kind of producing results, it becomes self-evident that change is happening. And you could think about Greta, or you could think about solar. There are examples where change has happened and it's become sustainable, and something really shifted. So it's a wonderful conversation here.
Yeah, thanks.
There's a couple other people. Marco, Didi, if you want to add anything, please feel free. Anyone, feel free. Don't even have to put up your hand. Just unmute yourself. There's only 10 of us.
I can't unmute myself. How do I do that?
You're unmuted. I can hear you, Didi. Speak up.
Yes. No. Suddenly I can. Wow. I was unmuted. You guys didn't allow me to speak, which is good. Yeah, Paul, what I'm missing is a specific objective. A vision. Where are we heading?
Great. And so with this project, we're still kind of challenging that one a little bit. There's Peter and Christopher have some very specific visions and goals, but in general, our main goal is to work with external project teams. So, for example, when we did the previous World Game projects, we were working mostly with self-created teams. So, for example, you'd have a group of 5 coaches, and they'd say, we want to create this project. They'd create a project, and a lot of those projects kind of fizzled out. They went off, they had some meetings, and after a while, they stopped going. Now, a few of those projects were really successful. For example, the people in Indonesia set up hundreds of windmills in small villages across Indonesia. Carmelie had some very successful projects in South America, and also there was a couple good, amazing projects in Africa. So at a certain level, with this project, with this game, what we're talking about is a little bit different in that we're specifically going out and finding existing high potential, ecologically focused projects. We're running them through a criteria, and we're looking for the projects that can have the most impact out in the world, and we're putting a group of coaches together to produce results. So the real vision is promoting the domain of eco-coaching, the very idea that you have someone who is an eco-coach who can drop into a project and produce powerful results, and that we're establishing that idea as a powerful solution. So that's my very short answer to your very complex question.
You know that I'm an agile coach, right? And that
Yes.
agile part of my coaching is very important to me. So why do you want it to be agile?
Well, for me, I'm very focused on agility as well. Now, I'm slowly moving from the word agile to the word agility, which is, something we're defining. And I do, just as, you and I have talked many times about how do we mix the world of coaching and the world of agile together into something that is unified. And so I'm always working on the grand unified theory of coaching plus agile, which nowadays have named universal agility.
What is that? Agility for me is a new way, a modern way of interaction, a more transparent way, and working in iterations, not having to present the result in one piece right away, but figuring it out. And coaching is one of the most powerful elements of agility that I can imagine. So it's obviously a win-win game, but agility is, it wants something concrete. If you want to make something transparent, you need to have something to make it transparent.
And I would include a little bit of design and strategy in that process. Previously, agile projects or agile as a discipline tend to be very focused on a single team and a single project, and expanding that into many teams working together in an organization or in an ecosystem. And also, how do you deal with strategy? How do you deal with design? How do you fit engineering into all of that as an iterative series of conversations that are improving the strategy, the design, and the engineering with each cycle?
And I would agree that the scaling part of that agile that already exists out there and is very IT and related isn't just the right thing. It doesn't work. Okay, fine. But we don't have a better way of doing things yet.
Well, I think we're working on that better way, and you're welcome to participate. Annie has her hand up, so I want to. She just disappeared. She was here, but she had her hand up, so we can just keep talking. Anyone else who's on the line, you're welcome to contribute to the conversation.